6:15 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Catherine Pereira and read by Mario Vijayawardena. The headlines. More coronavirus-infected persons have recovered. Measures to pay $1 million debt installment. More attention to ease the punishment of inmates who are under the death penalty. The Consumer Affairs Act will be amended. 5,000 tanks will be reconstructed. Derek Chauvin sentenced to over 22 years over George Floyd murder. The Ministry of Health says 2,172 more novel coronavirus patients were discharged from medical care within the last 24 hours as they have returned to health. This brings the total number of recoveries from COVID-19 in the country to 216,840. The country has so far reported 249,926 positive cases of COVID-19 and more than 30,000 of them are still being treated at designated hospitals and treatment centers. The death toll from the outbreak of the pandemic meanwhile stands at 2,862. State Minister Anuradha Jayaratne says that 5,000 tanks will be reconstructed within the next 3 years. He further said that the reconstruction work of 1,357 tanks have already commenced. The Ministry of Finance says a debt installment of $1 million will be paid on the 1st of next month. This will be the largest debt installment to be paid in recent times. This installment is relevant to an international sovereignty bond. The ministry also announces that measures will be taken to pay this sum without obstructions. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The prison spokesman Chandana Ekanayaka says the inmates who were engaged in a hunger strike on top of the chapel ward at the Valikada prison have called off their protest today. On Thursday, a group of inmates at the Mahara prison had commenced an indefinite fast unto death, urging the authorities to commute their death sentences to life imprisonment. The government has paid attention to ease the punishment of 250 inmates. It has also been reported that the relevant register has been given by the Ministry of Justice. Accordingly, the inmates who are under the death penalty for more than 10 years will be eased to a term of life imprisonment. The Consumer Services Authority Act will be amended. Measures will be taken to increase fine charges by 300%. State Minister Lasantha Alagiyawanna said that the relevant proposal will be submitted to the Cabinet within the next 2 weeks. At present, a very small fine is being charged from the businessmen and producers. He also states that the amendment will be conducted to protect the consumers. The Export Agricultural Department has taken measures to develop the Valanvita village in Haldamulla as an organic cultivation village in parallel to the Gama Samaga Pilisandarak program. The first initiative of this program was held at this village under the patronage of the President last year. The President has advised the authorities to develop this village as an organic cultivation village. The date of the debate for the no-confidence proposal against the Minister of Power will be decided at the next party leaders' meeting. Speaker Mahinda Abeyewardena said that the party leaders' meeting will be held on the 6th of next month. He said a decision will be taken in this regard after having a discussion. The Samagi Jana Balawega has handed over the no-confidence proposal against the increase of fuel prices to the Speaker. The SLFP has already announced that they will not give their support for this proposal. That's local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
The insurers of the fire-ravaged MV Express Pearl have agreed on a payment of 720 million rupees as interim compensation payment for the fisherfolk affected by the disaster. Sri Lanka is now witnessing one of the worst marine environmental disasters due to the massive fire that erupted aboard the Singapore-registered vessel in late May while it was in anchorage off Colombo. Massive quantities of damaged containers, toxic chemicals, plastic granules and other harmful substances spilled into the sea during the inferno. The maritime calamity has also had a severe impact on the local fishing communities as small-scale fishing along the western coast of the island were affected. Reportedly, several thousands of fisherfolk in the coastal areas who are dependent on fishing activities as a livelihood were hit by the disaster.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
And now in Watchlight, it is reported that people in the Aluthkama and Battapala villages are facing many hardships due to the limited bus operations in the area. They also complain that sufficient buses are not operated, especially in the mornings and evenings at the Ambalangoda bus stand. They request the relevant authorities to deploy more buses to these villages. This is for the attention of the governor of the southern province. That came to you in Watchlight, and now in world news headlines. Derek Chauvin sentenced to over 22 years over George Floyd murder. Australia extends Sydney lockdown as Delta outbreak grows. US President Biden says Afghans must decide their own future. The U.S. white ex-police officer convicted of murdering African-American man George Floyd in Minneapolis in May 2020 has been sentenced to 22 years and 6 months in jail. The judge said Derek Chauvin's sentence was based on abuse of a position of trust and authority and also the particular cruelty shown to Mr. Floyd. Mr. Floyd, 48, died after Chauvin knelt on his neck for 9 minutes. His murder caused global protests against racism and police brutality. Chauvin, 45, was convicted of second-degree murder and other charges last month. During his trial, his lawyer described the killing as an error made in good faith. The Australian city of Sydney has gone into a 2-week lockdown after a rise in the number of coronavirus cases. More than 1 million people in the central and eastern suburbs were already under restrictions imposed yesterday following a jump in cases. The lockdown now covers the whole city and some surrounding areas and is extended from 1 week to 2. More than 80 cases of the highly infectious Delta variant were confirmed in the city in recent days. US President Joe Biden has said that Afghans are going to have to decide their future as Afghan President Ashraf Ghani visited the White House. Mr. Biden promised continued support for the country even though US and NATO troops are set to finish their withdrawal on the 11th of September. It comes as hardline Islamist Taliban fighters have captured dozens of districts in a recent offensive. Earlier this week, the UN expressed alarm at their gains. The meeting came the day after the US announced plans to evacuate thousands of Afghans who worked for the US military ahead of the withdrawal. Many fear reprisals from the Taliban. And now the main points of the world news segment once again. Derek Chauvin sentenced to over 22 years over George Floyd murder. Australia extends Sydney lockdown as Delta outbreak grows. US President Biden says Afghans must decide their own future. That was world news, and now in development news, plans have been made to add 10,100 megawatts of electricity to the national grid within the next 10 years by renewable energy resources. It is expected to produce 9,000 megawatts of power by wind and solar power. The government hopes to generate 70% of the overall power requirements of the country through renewable power generation by the year 2030. That was development news, and now in sports news, the final T20 match between Sri Lanka and England will be held today. The English team is leading the match 2. Wicketkeeper Josh Buttler will miss the remainder of the England men's white ball series against Sri Lanka with a right calf injury. That was sports news.
Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply. Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money.
Sugarcane cultivation will be carried out in 4,000 hectares of lands in the Palavatta and Savanagala areas. 3,500 hectares of sugar cultivation is being carried out in the Palavatta area. As an interim result of this, measures have also been taken to produce animal food. That was Business News.
Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money. Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
Economic news. Courtesy of
I bought my daughter a laptop for her work by managing my finances. Whatever the expenses may be, I can't afford to miss out on life's special moments like her birthday or our anniversary. So you need to invest to make your family's future flourish.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibilities. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
The central bank says that 37 billion rupees worth treasury bills will be issued and the relevant auction will be held on Wednesday. These treasury bills will be issued expiring on 91, 182 and 364 days. Biddings will be called from primary dealers of government securities.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
Weather Report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
The Met Department says several spells of showers will occur in the western, Sabaragama, the northwestern provinces, and the Gala, Mathura, Kandy and the Nuwara Elia districts. Showers, thundershowers may occur at a few places in the Uva province, and the Batikalo, Ampara, Vavunia and the Mullaitivu districts in the evening or night.
Weather Report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
And now the headlines of this news broadcast once again. More coronavirus-infected persons have recovered. Measures to pay $1 million debt installments. More attention to ease the punishment of inmates who are under the death penalty. The Consumer Affairs Act will be amended. 5,000 tanks will be reconstructed. Derek Chauvin sentenced to over 22 years over George Floyd murder. That concludes this news broadcast.